Well, hello, and welcome to 181 Days. I'm Jack, and I just spent 12 days in Japan and 5 in Tokyo, and I have a whole bunch of videos coming up about being in Japan and some gear reviews, and I wanted to start off this little Japan series with my time in Tokyo. So we got there kind of late in the afternoon and night, and we were staying in Shinjuku, which, in case no one knows, it's kind of like the New Orleans of Tokyo. It's very party, lots of like bright lights and neon and shops and kind of like the Vice area. You can kind of do whatever you want there. Tons of people. You can see in the video here the little Godzilla head in the middle. That's the Hotel Gracery. We were actually staying there. It's a Godzilla themed hotel. It's actually pretty cool. It's a really nice hotel. I'd highly recommend it just for traveling if you don't mind staying in kind of the party area. But yeah, our first night we just kind of acclimated, got our bearings with where we were, and saw how many people there were in town. And then we got like a pretty easy meal and just kind of watched how many people were around. And it was a nice way to kind of wind down after 15 hours of flying. So the next morning we woke up and we actually weren't feeling too jet lagged, I think because our flight got in so late and we were so tired, we were able to just kind of sleep through the night and get going, which was really awesome to not waste a lot of time in Japan. We started moving in the morning and of course had to stop to see some trains. We saw that famous 3D cat, which we would go and see that a whole bunch of times. Had to look at the vending machines, and the culture there is so interesting with it. I'd heard all about it and we ended up using them a ton. And we were making our way to the Meiji Jingu Shrine, which is kind of like southwest Tokyo, a little bit south of Shinjuku. And it's just a really nice big park. It's a huge park with a really nice shrine inside. And we wanted to go see that as the first thing we did to just kind of get our bearings and learn a little bit about the local history. You can clean yourself before you go in. You're supposed to kind of clean yourself before you go into any of the shrines, and you see a lot of people doing that. I thought this was just a really nice place, and it was packed. There was a lot of people. We actually saw a traditional marriage going on here, which was pretty cool. Some wedding photos, and those trees you see are the husband and wife trees that are supposed to give you good luck as a husband and wife. And we were on our honeymoon, so it was kind of nice to see that as our first day in Tokyo to get a little just inspiration, I guess. This shrine is also where we realized one of the cool parts of Japan when you're a tourist is stamp collecting. We bought a calligraphy book here and we started putting stamps in it at all the different shrines and train stations and everything we went to, and it's just a cool keepsake. There are stamps everywhere and everyone kind of does it. And once we left the getting a stamp area, you can see these sake bottles that they used to make in this park, in this temple, and it's now just kind of a cool art installation. Once we finished there, we started walking over to the Harajuku part of Tokyo, which ended up being one of my favorite parts of the whole trip. It's just a really cool kind of like punk rocky, secondhandy area. But on the way there, we tried to stop for lunch at, of course, some Instagram famous dumpling place, which had a huge line. And then the place next to it had a huge line. So we decided to bail. And of course, on the way, we had to stop and do a little bit of vintage shopping because there's so much cool vintage stuff in Japan, even though a lot of it is stuff that the US is into now as well. So you can kind of get it both places, but it was still cool to see it. And anyway, we walked out and we found a really cool ramen place that had no line and no people in it when we got there. And I think this was our second day, and we ended up having some of the best food we had in the entire trip. It was awesome. Go into the places you don't expect. After lunch, we headed to Liberty Walk, which is a custom car shop that I've always wanted to visit. They were kind of a cultural phenomenon a couple of years ago, putting big fenders on cars, and I've always wanted to visit the shop. It was really cool to go there and see some of the merch and some of the cars. The people were really awesome, and the vibe was great. I highly recommend visiting here. After that, we headed over to Takashita Street, which is like the main tourist road, and a lot of K-pop, a lot of J-pop, a lot of clothing, and it was so packed, it was almost hard to walk through. So we actually kind of peeled off, went to a shrine that was on a parallel street, and then we actually just caught the train back to the hotel because that night we had a tour of the Piss Alley bars in Shinjuku. I know that name sounds off-putting, but they're tiny little local bars that some allow foreigners, some are local only, but we had a tour guide who brought us into some of these, and they're pretty famous bars. There's a whole ton of them in this area, and it was really cool to see. I'd highly recommend going with a guide, and that was our whole first day. The next morning, we had a bright and early fish market tour, which, yes, 8:30 in the morning fish tour is a questionable choice, but they get these fish at 4 in the morning and they start cutting them pretty quickly after, and then they start selling them. So 8 in the morning is really, if you want to do a fish tour, you go early, you get the freshest stuff, and it was great. We went with a guide, and we were the only people on the tour. So it was 2 tour guides and us. And you can see here, we had some of the best tuna that I've ever had in my life. We had fat, lean, and mid pieces, and our guide brought real wasabi, which he ground on a shark skin grinder. And it was just not like anything I've ever tasted. It barely tasted like fish. We spent a lot of time just walking around the market and seeing everything that was there. This is the Tsukiji Outer Fish Market, which is the older fish market in Tokyo. There's actually 2. They built a new one now where they actually sell the fish and do the auctions in the morning, and that's a little bit more north than this one. This is the older one, and this is where all the shops are. It's open to the public, and there's a ton of shops. It's kind of like rings of shops as you get closer to the middle, and there's a lot of different ones to try. Our guide had us stop at one and just grab some fish off of a tarp and try it, and I was a little apprehensive, but it was delicious. And again, we had that fresh wasabi. They were cutting fish up in the back as we were standing there. You can see there's all sorts of different things here. People actually do go there and shop. It's not just a tourist thing. And they start to run out of fish around maybe like 10:30, 11, so you do want to get there early. And I highly recommend going with a guide because he knew all the good places. And you know, when you're dealing with raw fish and you're on vacation, you want to kind of know you're getting a good deal. And at the end, we had some Wagyu, which is really popular in Japan, the Kobe, the Wagyu, and it was just amazing. It was like eating the essence of barbecue. It was barely like eating meat. And the very end of the tour, we had kind of an omelet experience here. We saw this guy making these rectangular omelets, which were really popular, and it was kind of cool just to see him do this. So once we finished, and I would not want to eat fish again for a couple days because we had so much fish, we took a train and we went up to Ginza. And Ginza is actually pretty close to that fish market, but Ginza is the famous shopping area in Tokyo. It's every single luxury brand you could possibly imagine, and even like Louis Vuitton's just like a back alley place here. There's everything you can think of. It's crazy. We went to Ginza 6, which is one of the famous shopping malls. We went to the 8th floor Uniqlo just to see kind of what it was. It's the same stuff over and over. Found a really cool sky garden where we could just kind of hang out on a bridge and watch people just walk around, and that was kind of really cool and relaxing. There's a shrine up there that people kept coming to and praying, which was really neat. Then we hopped another train and we went to the Akasuka area, which is where the oldest shrine in Tokyo is, and it's really touristy. It was so busy and packed, and there was schools, and we didn't really want to hang out in the tourist area that much, so we did a walkthrough. It was all right. We got hungry. We decided to leave the area and go to a brewery. We found a really cool brewery called Hitachino, which I'm pretty sure we get in the US. It has a little owl as a logo. It was cool. Hung out there, got some food, and then we actually went back to Shinjuku to get some rest in. You can see here some of the for hire boyfriends and girlfriends that do the host and hostess clubs. I've heard that people don't walk through the center of this, and I decided to give it a go and walk through. It was totally fine. No one approached me, but it's a very interesting cultural thing, and it gets kind of crazy later as the night goes on, but interesting to see. But yeah, after this, we just crashed because the next morning we were going to Mount Fuji. And I'm going to dedicate a second video to Mount Fuji just because it was a whole day thing and it was really interesting. We did a bus tour out there and it kind of deserves its own thing, but I put a few clips in here just because we had a really good day for it. It was pretty beautiful and it was really nice to see. Lots of walking though. There's the famous pagoda that you see a lot of photos of, and yeah, it was a pretty neat experience to go there. Highly recommend doing a tour, but I'll make another video about that. The next morning, we went to the Gotokuji Shrine, which is outside of Tokyo, and I actually think that this was one of my favorite things we did on the entire trip. This is the shrine that the famous like waving lucky cat comes from, and I did not know that this was a Japanese thing. I did not know it was outside of Tokyo, and it was in a really relaxing and peaceful, quiet neighborhood. You take a train outside of Tokyo for a little while, and then there's very clearly a lot of people walking there, so you kind of join the thin-ish crowd, and you get there, and the shrine is very big. It's very nice. It's kind of like a forest, and it was a great place to just kind of relax, and it's crazy that you can find so much peace and quiet in such a huge city. So there's a pretty cool story that sets up why this lucky cat with the waving paw is a thing, and I'm not going to spoil it because I think it's pretty cool to learn while you're there. I didn't know the story. I really didn't know anything behind it. So while you're there, research why the waving cat is a thing, and it's a pretty neat thing. And the thing with the shrine is everyone buys a little porcelain cat of the famous waving cat and leaves it at the shrine. So you'll see in a second, there's a lot of cats that people leave. It's a pretty cool, unique experience, and I definitely think it's somewhere worth visiting. So our next thing to do on the agenda was go to the Starbucks Reserve Roastery in Tokyo, which is not super far from the Cat Shrine. And if you've never been to one of those roasteries, they're pretty cool experiences. It's still Starbucks, so it's still sort of corporate-y, but they're all unique, and you can get really interesting local type of pastries and foods and very, very interesting coffees, and they all have kind of their own thing. It's a cool experience. They are allegedly really roasting beans there, so you can go in and see them as they're sort of getting beans ready for coffee. And it's a cool place to hang out. This one is 3 stories tall. One floor is food, the second floor is tea, the third floor is alcoholic drinks and coffee. And you can see this cup wall here. They have sort of their own art in each building. They have a label wall here of all their different coffees that make a neat little mural. You can see it says Tokyo in the middle of there. It's a pretty cool place to hang out for a little bit, at least go get a drink. They had a very, very unique black coffee that was aged in whiskey barrels and kind of tasted like whiskey, even though it didn't actually have alcohol in it. Very different, not something I'd ever tried before, so it was fun to spend some time there and get a little souvenir, but not something I'd make the core of my trip, but definitely worth going to. All of them are kind of worth going to if you do. We also had a great view of a dance studio on the 3rd floor, so got to see some people learning how to dance. After that, we went to the famous Shibuya Scramble Crossing, which got famous from Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, where they drift a car through this huge group. You have to buy something if you want to go up to some of the windows. I bought a macaroon at Starbucks. You saw me eating it there. And you just kind of get to see this crazy scramble crossing where the lights turn red and everyone can just kind of go every direction they want. Apparently at night, it's a lot more jam-packed. We weren't around here at night, so we just came to see it during the day. It's still pretty busy. I don't really know how it resolves itself, but it was fun to see. Then we hopped the train and we went and got some really good curry udon back in Harajuku, just because we really ended up liking that area. We went back to the hotel, and outside of our hotel, there was a breakdancing competition going on, which was pretty cool to see. So we watched that for a while, and we kind of called it after that. That was our time in Tokyo. After this, we took a train to Kyoto, and we ended the night tonight by, going to see a train, because trains in Japan are awesome. So stay tuned for a Kyoto video, Mount Fuji video, and some reviews. Appreciate you being here. Like and subscribe.